I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Today we're talking about how to change practice areas. There's a lot of talk about how transferable actuarial skills can be, but how do you actually do it? In my career and coaching conversations, especially talking to life insurance actuaries who are facing some unique challenges in a consolidating market, actuaries want to know how, or maybe whether it's even possible, to change practice areas. Joining us for this discussion is Barry Leung. Barry's an experienced actuary, a senior leader, board director, an avid volunteer, and a dedicated father, just to name a few. And he's used his curiosity and courage to steer his career across several practice areas, and he's here to share his experience and advice with you. Barry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Julia.
So, Barry, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation because it seems to be such a hot topic at the moment. In so many of my conversations, it's many actuaries are wondering, is it possible to change practice areas and how might they do it? So looking forward to hearing your stories and advice today. But before we get into that, I want to ask you the question I ask all my guests, and it's this. Barry, how do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
All right, thank you, Julia. I actually don't think I have superpowers as such because it sounds as though only certain people can attain it.
Okay.
And I don't think superpower is the best description. But I think one thing that actuaries are very good at is adapting to different problems and able to use their superpowers, quotation mark, to resolve them. So I think actuaries in general has a lot of superpowers, use superpowers using the description you have. But I may provide two of them that I think is very relevant to my career. So first of them is transforming strategy into impact into organizations and the community. So example of that for myself is when I was working at Defence Health, I was the head of strategy and actuarial services. And we actually set up the first hotline to help our veterans apply for a white card, which is a special veterans healthcare card for them to get services and most of our pocket expenses being paid by the Veteran Affairs. So I think there's something that we think is important. Veterans are very important in our community. Defence Health, one of its main purposes is protecting people, protect our country. So able to serve a very important segment of our society, able to provide value back to them, given the service they provided to our country, I think is very important. So able to turn that strategy to helping in veterans, finding particular way we can execute that and then execute it. I think that was a very good example.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
And such meaningful impact, such an important thing to be able to do with your skills. I won't call them superpowers if you don't like that word, but with your skills.
It's an interesting kind of example of that, I think. Another one is around having that global perspective and that impact around the world. So again, as you may know, I was one of the International Labour Organization Impact Insurance Fellow. And I was given the chance to work with the Ghanaian government on the Universal Health Cover Scheme. So the fact that I'm able to work with different funding partners and partners around the world, able to be exposed to inclusive insurance, able to be exposed to our development partners, and work with local Ghanaians on their health insurance scheme, Universal Health Cover Scheme is very, very, very rewarding. So again, I'm able to leverage my experience and my skill set, hopefully to generate something better for them.
Yeah. That's another great example, Barry. And, how wonderful that you've been able to use your actuarial skills to make such a positive impact in such important areas of society as well.
Yeah. And I think it's actually quite interesting because I think sometimes you do need to have the right environment, the right people, and even the right context for you to able to utilize your powers, your superpowers. And I'm always very grateful for people along my journey who help me and support me along the way. Because without those people, without them creating the right environment, sometimes it's actually very hard to execute or to harness that superpower.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Having great people around you to work with, that can really amplify the impact that you can make.
Yeah,
If you're working in a great team and you've got great people and you're all working towards the same thing, super powerful.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So some great examples about how you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. Talk to me a bit about your experience of changing practice areas, because both of those examples are very different, and not traditional insurance examples that many actuaries are familiar with. So how have you changed practice areas and navigated those changes throughout your career?
Yeah, I've been actually reflecting on that since as part of the preparation for this podcast. And I mean, I guess like a lot of people with the actuarial background, I started off as an actuarial analyst in a health insurer. So probably not that different from maybe a lot of the listeners to this podcast. But I think what I find quite interesting is what actually happened after when you start your first job. And I mentioned around right people and right context and right environment. Actually, that helps a lot. So I can give you some examples. So I was working as a assistant actuary at Medibank Private at one stage, and I was working quite closely with the marketing team on segmentation. And then there's an opening of a research and analysis manager in the marketing area. And they said, "Oh, Barry, given you've been working with us on marketing stuff, are you interested in joining the marketing team?" But I said, I have no experience in market research. I don't know what that means. I sort of know, but not really know.
Yeah.
But they said, well, we work quite well with you. You work quite well with us as well. Why don't you have a go at that? And then I started off with a 12 months secondment as a research analysis manager, and then
Wow.
ultimately work in the marketing area for 3 years.
Wow. I mean, that's a really unique experience, Barry. I'm sure many actuaries have not worked in a marketing team before.
Yeah, so I can give you very different kind of environment and different context and different ways of working. Because I'm the research analysis manager, I get to know focus groups, how they conducted, how do we
Yeah.
do member satisfaction,
Yeah.
all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So areas that have some adjacency to analytics, but also a different way of looking at the problem, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one example.
Can I ask you about that example? Sorry, I know you've got lots of examples because you've made lots of changes. When you were faced with that opportunity to take that role, and I'm just reflecting on some of the career conversations I have with other actuaries who will often say, "Oh no, that's not actuarial, that's not the path, so I won't take that opportunity. I need to, follow some sort of predetermined path for fear of something," and that something can vary. Were you concerned about taking a sort of a sidestep into marketing? What was going through your mind when you were making that decision about whether or not to take that unusual opportunity? What were the pros and cons?
I guess I was very lucky in the sense that I've been working with them for a while before they sort of like asked me to take on the role. So I know who I'm working with, and I do enjoy that relationship working with them, and hopefully they feel the same way. But also there's an element that I'm sort of familiar with given the work I've done with them so far. So for example, there's still a lot of analysis stuff, not naturally actuarial as such, but we'll be looking at profitability by different segments or prioritizing segments for marketing purposes, for example. They are even though they may not be very technical actuarial subject matter, but still relevant to the training and the experience the actuary should have. So this is quite a safe area, I guess, for me to explore.
Yeah.
But then my own personality, I really like variety.
Okay.
So I really like that. So the fact that I've never done any market research, and I heard about market research a lot for this reason. So, I never done market research. How would that actually pan out?
Yeah.
So, for example, if not have, and then I was actually grateful for able to do that because, for example, if I had not done that job in Medibank as a research analysis manager, I wouldn't know how qualitative and quantitative research combine together. How does that work? How do researchers, market researchers, map profiles of individual consumers? There's actually new knowledge, new experience, and give me that variety that I'm always longing for in my career. So I think that that level of curiosity really drives me, I guess, to get something like that.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bill Morella, CEO of Actex Learning, and I'm excited to introduce our latest publication, Aspiring Actuarial Leaders, The Modern Manager's Toolkit by Julia Lessing, a qualified actuary and executive coach with over 20 years of experience. This book is packed with practical strategies, real-world insights, and expert guidance to help you navigate the challenges of modern management. Whether you're a new manager or aiming for executive leadership, this resource will equip you with the skills to thrive. Get your copy today at actexlearning.com and take the next step in your actuarial career.
So even though it wasn't maybe on a traditional path, there was a lot of familiarity around that. You knew the people in that team, you're part of the same organization, still using actuarial skills or data skills, but also learning some new things and exploring some new things and getting that variety, but also rounding out your understanding of how the business works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that I got a chance to work with people who are not actuarial, I guess, is also sometimes helpful. Because marketing and finance people sort of portray them as like end of two different kind of spectrum, right? Sometimes, and it's actually very good to understand where they're coming from. Sometimes.
What did you learn from working with non-actuarial people, with marketing people?
Yeah, so I think they naturally, depending on which organization you work in, naturally they are always interested in meeting certain targets. Membership targets, sales targets, retention targets, right? But they're also very interested in, they're also very aware about the budget they can spend, because marketing budget can be very constrained. So they're always looking for new ways to get value for money for their spend.
Yeah.
And again, from finance perspective, and one thing that financial people always ask for, give me some evidence about your return on investment.
Yeah.
Naturally, right?
Yeah.
So as part of my role there, for example, we started looking at lifetime value of customers as a way of measuring return, rather than just some other means of looking at the problem. So that also helped the marketing people to talk to the finance people as a result, as part of my role. So that is actually very interesting to see. Okay, this is where the marketing people are coming from. This is where the finance people are coming from. How can I be the bridge between the two, so that we can get a level of collaboration going, so that and build the trust, I guess, between the two areas.
So you were that bridge between
Yes.
finance and marketing. Yeah. Being able to connect the financial objectives with the investment and the people-centric in objectives as well. And how interesting to take that long-term view. I mean, that's actuarial, right? To take a member lifetime value rather than just this quarter sales or something.
Yeah, so that was actually very interesting, a lot of fun as well, working in the marketing department. Again, we sometimes stereotype things a lot. And we sort of like think of marketing people looks this way and finance people look this way. For example, actuaries look this way. But even within marketing, you got a variety of different people working in marketing. The brand manager versus the campaign manager versus the retention manager, they have different focuses. And being able in that kind of research analysis role, again, I get exposed to, I guess, different means of marketing and where people are coming from, and how the research analysis team can support them to fulfill their purposes.
So it sounds like you learned a lot from that secondment.
Yeah. I always find it interesting to learn new things along the way, and that's probably one of the key drivers of my career. I'm always very interested in learning new things.
Yeah. Okay. Even if it's outside your comfort zone, or even if it's outside what you might have expected was your next career step.
Yeah. So I actually find that, with sometimes people find it very difficult to take the plunge,
Yes.
right? And you sort of like one thing I learned is let's think about you take the plunge. What is the worst case scenario?
Hmm.
And if you feel like you can actually deal with the worst case scenario, then you may as well take the plunge, especially if something that interests you. When I talk to a lot of people and when people think about and it's a lot of those kind of worst case scenario may be driven by fear. But fear is actually something that in a lot of cases, it's actually something that may happen in the future, but not necessarily will happen.
Mm.
And again, addressing those fears, able to maybe talk to someone about those fears, or even talk to the person who giving you the opportunity about those fears, sometimes can be very helpful because things usually turn out a bit better than you think.
Yep. And things have turned out better than you thought with those decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, most people will evaluate an opportunity in front of you. Most
Mm.
people will.
Mm.
But I usually think about, what's the worst thing that can happen to me if I take this opportunity?
Yep.
Um, and if the value of the opportunity far outweighed the risk, I guess, attached to the opportunity,
Yep.
then just take it.
Yeah. Yep. That's such a good question to ask yourself, Barry. And I wonder why we overestimate the risk or overestimate what, the worst that could happen. Because I think just drawing on my own experience and also drawing on my experience coaching actuaries, that resonates when you say that. And even my own experience, I've just left sort of paid employment again or contract of paid employment to be self-employed again. And people often say to me, how do you cope with that? How do you manage being self-employed? And I think it's the same sort of thing. I mean, as actuaries, as trained actuaries, we've got lots of options. So, it's never going to be as bad as you think. But why? I mean, do you think do you think actuaries overestimate that, or do you think people in general just overestimate what the worst is that could happen?
Um, Probably a couple of things. I think actuaries are always trying to look at downside risk.
Yep.
Probability of ruin, or what the worst case can happen, or stress testing, reverse stress testing. They all seems to me looking at downside.
Yes.
As actuaries, we are not very. I got a feeling that our training may not necessarily prepare us to look at the upside.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. So what can happen that would be good? Put it that way, right?
mm.
So if you're focused so much on the downside and don't really look at the upside, then you already have an imbalanced assessment of an opportunity.
Yep.
So that's one. I think background and your personality will also play a role.
Yep.
So for example, I'm from Hong Kong originally, and the Asian culture, through parenting and even the culture itself, we tend to sort of look at, oh, this is the worst that can happen. That's what's going to happen to you. Tend to again focus on how to mitigate the risk
Mhm.
rather than thinking of opportunities. So
Mm.
again, if you have a particular mindset that, oh, this thing, something bad is going to happen to me,
Mm.
then it's sometimes, especially if that is kind of your upbringing or your belief system, that can sometimes be a bit difficult to shake as well.
It really can be. And I guess if that belief system and upbringing is to be risk averse, and then we go on and do formal studies in managing risk and quantifying risk as actuarial studies, that probably just reinforces that even further. So by the time we're making decisions and risk assessments about our careers, often we've got that big backlog of bias in terms of how we think that might go. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So, okay, so you took this secondment in the marketing team, market research team, and learnt a lot from that. And it sounds like the upside there far outweighed, what could go wrong by taking that leap. And you managed that risk as well by you knew the team and there was a level of familiarity in there as well. What other times have you made changes in practice areas, and how did you navigate those?
Yeah, probably a few. There's a fair few, but I'll give you another kind of not strange, but another example.
Mhm.
So I was working in defense health, and our CEO is a retired Major General. And he probably joined after 3 years after I joined the organization. And I said to him, I've been working in Defence Health for a few years now, but I do not really understand Defence Force. Could you help me? Okay. Then and then after a few months, after he joined, he said, "Well, I'm now able to secure a secondment for you to work in defence recruitment. Will you be interested in that?
Recruitment.
Will you be interested in doing that?" Okay.
Wow. Okay. That is quite a change.
Okay. So okay. So I said, "Oh, how could," and I asked him what's it about, and it's not necessarily I'm doing the recruitment, but actually being embedded into the outsourced. So defense recruitment is outsourced to another private organization.
Okay.
And he's able to arrange the secondment into that private organization and work as part of their strategy kind of team. So I said, "Well, how about there's an opportunity like this that I can arrange for you. Will you be interested in doing something like that?"
Wow.
And then I said, "Well, I've never worked in recruitment. I don't really understand Defence Force that much."
Yeah.
But then it sounds very interesting because I never worked in recruitment, and I'm really not. I work in Defence Health and I know the numbers, but I never understand defence as such. And he explained to me that recruitment is a very important function of defence naturally because they need to keep on having a pipeline of young talent going into the forces. So then, and it's a very safe place because I do trust him that he will not set me up for failure or anything like that, the CEO. So as a result, then I did that.
Wow. And that came out of having that conversation with him and being curious and asking, and probably being vulnerable as well to say, I don't really understand that much about defence. Can you help me understand that? And then that's led to this incredible opportunity to again do something very much outside the actuarial world.
Yeah. So again, when I was working on the secondment, I work on their pipeline. I work on their budgeting processes. I work on finding pain points in their recruitment processes and things like that. But again, through the pipeline and understanding all of that, I have the exposure of what happened to people who before they entered the force, and what kind of people they're looking for in the force.
Right.
What the processes they undertake to get to that point. So that gave me some really good insights into how the defense force sort of operates, especially at the start of that funnel. So I think it's a fascinating, even though it's not a long period of time, but it's a fascinating kind of look into defense through that particular lens.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different lens that you wouldn't have been able to look through if you had stayed in your actuarial team.
No.
So what was that like then, having that different perspective and having seen through that different lens after your secondment finished?
Yeah, so it gave me a good understanding too. So it gave me a good understanding of how defense work on strategy. That really helps because defense is a massive organization, as you may see, and the strategy plays a very important role in defense. So understanding how they formulate strategy, how they actually execute the strategy in the recruitment side of things is important. Understanding stakeholders within defense is interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a private organization who I guess handle the recruitment on behalf of defense. So you got an outsourced organization doing the job. But then you also have defense force personnel as part of that triangle because they are the one who actually ultimately select the talent going into the force. So they're important stakeholders naturally. But you also have defense public servants because the public servants are the one who control the budget.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of really sometimes very complex stakeholder mapping. And understanding how stakeholder management work within the defense force is extremely important, given the complexity of the organization. So I learned a lot about stakeholder management through that particular secondment, how that works, who say what, who are the key decision makers and things like that. So that really helps me in my career defense health.
That stakeholder engagement piece is so important. I can imagine it would be super complex in defence, but also complex in many private organisations as well, insurance companies and other places where actuaries typically work. What did you learn about stakeholder engagement or stakeholder management throughout that process that you found helpful insight as an actuary? How's that helped your career?
Yeah. I guess understanding people's perspective and where they're coming from is extremely important. So, for example, at one stage, I do not really understand how do you get defense public servants in this mix? What do they do in this thing, right? But especially as an outsourced organization, we need to work with them quite closely because the defense public servants actually is the key stakeholder from a contract and budget management perspective. So whenever we need to spend money, especially which is not part of the contract or outside the contract, then having that engagement with the defense public service is extremely important, even though they may not be the ultimate decision maker on recruitment as such. So, for example, from defense public service perspective, it's more around how can we make sure that we satisfy all the KPIs in the contract, making sure understand the clauses of the contract, understand the budget being allocated to the contract, able to navigate that relatively complex environment from a contract perspective. Defense personnel is very different. They're focused in getting the best people they can from recruitment.
Yeah.
That's all they want.
Okay.
And making sure that they got a certain level of diversity in their talent. For example, female versus male, culturally diverse background, or First Nations background, for example. So the push is not necessarily about how much money they spend on recruitment. They're focused in getting the right workforce for them.
Right.
Very different kind of angle looking at the problem. So yeah. So as an outsourced provider, we need to make sure that we're able to manage, I guess, and synthesize and harmonize some of these very competing priorities.
And I imagine having that perspective and that understanding just allows you to approach your actuarial work in a different way. When you know that context and, domain knowledge, as we talk about, it's not just the topic that we're doing our work within, it's the context that we operate within. And so understanding how that works, I guess having these secondments into different areas gives you a very good opportunity to understand that even better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if I use that learning and apply in an actuarial example, say, so example, we're doing a piece of work on pricing. You already have different stakeholders with different priorities from a pricing perspective. A marketing or sales department want to have conversion and retention. The CFO will probably want to make sure that we got sustainable level of profitability out of pricing. Our risk people want to make sure that the operational risk associated with pricing is being managed appropriately. So I think one of the key things is understanding where people are coming from and what they want, what kind of outcomes they're seeking from a particular piece of work is extremely helpful for actuaries to understand. And as a result, manage and balance the priorities from different stakeholders accordingly.
Okay. So we've heard a little bit about some examples of how you've moved out of an actuarial team and the opportunities that have come up for you to take a secondment in marketing or in recruitment, which has given you the opportunity to build new skills and also to see the organisation through a different lens. We've talked about how those opportunities ticked boxes for you around variety and learning new things and trying out new things. And the way you've overcome that is to ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And to kind of actually do a risk assessment around that and realize that actually, the pros will outweigh the cons in taking that kind of different sort of pathway and that opportunity to do something different. I want to finish the interview, Barry, with a question to wrap up and just thinking about our actuaries who are wanting to change practice areas or wondering if changing practice areas is possible. And I know you've given them some tangible examples and tangible tips today. But I just wonder if there was one tip, a top tip that you have for actuaries who are considering taking that leap into a different practice area or a different team, what would you tell them?
I would say when an opportunity arrives, take the plunge, even though you may not know 100% of the role. Because with sometimes opportunities, sometimes you seek opportunity yourself, and sometimes opportunity actually comes to you. That happens to me a few times. But the key thing is when an opportunity arrives, then do you have the courage to take the plunge? Because I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you never take the plunge, you never know what's going to happen next. So what we talked about risk assessment a bit earlier. So of course, you're not going to take a plunge into something that is, something and the risk is too high, so high that you're not going to be able to bear it at the end of the day. But if you do feel like it's something, but if it is because I really don't know the role, I don't have the skill set, or I don't have the experience, to me, you'll be pleasantly surprised how your experience and your skill set actually complement the opportunity that you may be presented with. Because I can tell you right now, I think the actuarial skill set is extremely transferable to different circumstances. So even though it may be something that you may not be familiar with, or subject matter or topic, you'll be pleasantly surprised that your skill set will actually able to contribute to a better outcome.
So have the courage and take the plunge, and you might find that you're pleasantly surprised that it's actually a fantastic experience. Barry, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really interesting hearing your real examples about how you've moved into different teams and the advice that you have for our other actuaries. So thank you.
No, thank you, Julia, thank you.
So there you have it, real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.